Okay, so welcome back, beautiful loves. It is so good to be here today with my beautiful friend and sister and colleague, Sara Whipp. Oh my gosh, Sara, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you because I feel like, and we were just speaking to this like before I hit record here, but we have so much in common. Like, I feel like whenever I see something that you write about or something that you're sharing, I'm just like, I'm such a like, yes, to so much of what you say. And yet, like, I feel like I've been dancing in like similar spaces and like following similar trajectories and similar threads, but almost like with slightly different language. And so I'm so excited to like have this conversation with you today because you have such an incredible wealth of wisdom and medicine to share with this world that like truly is starving for the feminine right now. And I feel like you bring such a beautiful transmission around feminine magnetism, feminine polarity, like relationships, God, and like our feminine, like specifically our feminine relationship with God. And then all of the like practical stuff as well. Like I love how practical so much of your content is. It's like, okay, here's how to like be in your radiance and your magnetism as a woman. And also here's how to like write an online dating profile. And I feel like you bring this element of like practicality and like pragmatism to an arena that can feel very like woo woo and very sort of mystical and hard and like intangible and hard to really pin down. So that's one of the things that I also love about your work is like it's very energetic. It's very sourced in like the feminine, the potency of the feminine energy, but it's also very like pragmatic and practical, or like how actually to create these results that you want in your life, whether that's partnership, whether that's feminine business, whether that's like really, so many different at like creating a beautiful home, like all of these different areas that you talk about. So one of the things I love about your work too, it's so multidimensional, like, and somehow you're able to flow between these different subjects. And I feel like this is what the feminine does. She kind of flows from like, her homemaker self to her business self, to her like housewife self, and like all of these different archetypes and aspects and identities of the feminine. Like you really are able to hold all of these in such a potent way and somehow like make it be coherent and cohesive, which for me has been really healing because I'm like, wait, how do I reconcile my like business owner identity with like, my desire to be like a wife to my husband? And that can be really challenging. And I feel like you do such an amazing job at like bridging all of these things that perhaps we have never seen bridged before, at least not on like any sort of mass collective scale. And so yeah, that's my like little introduction to you, Sara. Is there anything that you would like to share about your work, or anything that you'd like to just share to like, something perhaps I missed around like your what it is that you do in the world, what it is that you are called to do, what it is that like you feel like is um your calling in the world.
I feel like you nailed it and you said it way better than I could ever say.
Thank
It's
you.
wonderful. And I feel the same way. I'm so honored to be here, first of all. Thank you. And I'm so inspired by your work. It's just the way that you speak, it's beautiful. It's like poetry. And it really, you have a way with words for sure. You're an amazing writer. So
Oh,
yeah,
thank
but
you.
as far as like bringing in the practical aspect, that's just something that was huge for me. I discovered the concept of masculine and feminine energy back in 2016 when I stumbled upon Alison Armstrong, who she's still probably my greatest influence, and then Mama Gina. And I really liked Mama Gina because she's just kind of fun and playful about it. But then in 2019 was when I found Rory Ray, and I don't know if you know her, but
I've heard of her work, but I'm not that familiar with her.
she really makes it like very tangible. And
Okay.
for with her, it's specific to dating. And then a little bit with actually being in a relationship. But I feel like she's kind of a bridge for me. And so a lot of what I teach, I want people to know what it actually looks like on a practical level, because I feel like it's not a new concept, it's an old concept, but it's um kind of new in the past, I mean, probably since like the 50s, we haven't really, no one that I know has had an example from like their parents of what a polarized relationship looks like, and maybe our grandparents, but that generation is, you know, there's not a lot of those people left. So we don't have a
Yeah.
lot of practical examples in our real life about what a polarized relationship can look like, or what even a homemaker is anymore. So I feel like the more I can bring it forward as like, this is what it could look like. And obviously, like, there's no right or wrong, and every woman is going to have her own expression of that. But it's helpful to me to see it kind of in like, this is what it could look like in real life.
I love that so much. I'm just curious, whenever you are talking about polarized relationships or homemaking or these topics that perhaps have not been in, you know, in the collective for quite a few decades, right? It's like something that we have as a norm, like that people just do. Do you ever feel like it's really controversial or almost edgy, like what you're speaking to? It's almost edge play, like traditionalism is somehow subversive or somehow it's edgy for the current culture that we live in.
Absolutely, it does feel that way. For me, that's probably part of why I like it. I'm a little bit of a rebel at heart. So
Totally same. Yeah.
so old it's new. And I just feel that we lost something when we stopped valuing what traditional femininity brings to our families and our even just our culture as a whole. We've lost this, we've lost the value for it. So we don't value women who are just homemakers, or people who, women, especially who choose to prioritize their relationships and then possibly let their business flow out of that priority. And
I love that.
I just feel in my own soul, I felt this calling a few years ago of just like this longing for home, this deep longing to like nest and um like make my own food and make a beautiful space and make the energy of my home something lovely. And I really kind of felt alone in that until I started talking about it. And then I realized there are so many women who are feeling this way. And women will message me all the time in my inbox, and they'll be like, "You're so brave for talking about this." And to me, it's not really, maybe at first, but now it's just like, I'm just sharing the way that I
Yeah.
feel, the way that a lot of us are feeling. And I don't think that this is the way. I just think it's a,
Mhm.
and it's like an invitation to people who feel the calling to return to that.
Yeah, and it's such a valuable way to, and again, it looks different for every woman, and you know, there's so much room for creativity even within that template of like traditional relationships, or you know, like even like flexibility within that. And yet, I'm curious, do you feel like why do you feel like it has become so undervalued? Like, why is it so? What does it feel like for a woman to say, I'm just a wife or I'm just a mother? Like, why do you feel like she has to put that just in there? What is that qualifier about?
I mean, I think it goes back to the feminist movement, and I'm very grateful. Like, I just need to say, I'm very grateful for the fact that we have equal rights and that we can, you know, have a bank
We can
account.
vote. Sure. Yeah.
Those are all very important things. I'm not knocking,
Yeah.
but it was really this underlying current within that movement of the masculinization of women,
Hmm.
and kind of like the masculine being the standard that women were supposed to live up to, instead of the feminine qualities being an amazing complement to the masculine, and really, really something that's like valued and taught and passed down. And we don't even have any education around it anymore. We don't, it's not taught in school. It's not modeled. Most of us didn't have that modeled in our families. And people are just supposed to know somehow, like you're just supposed, like your career is the most important thing. And you're supposed to get a lot of education around that and then go out and, you know, climb the corporate ladder, and you're just supposed to somehow know how to take care of your home and to be a good mother and to be a good wife and to have a good relationship, with zero, like, there's nothing put into that, nothing put into the education, nothing given as an example. And it's kind of just seen as like you're not supposed to need a man. You're not supposed to long for a home, but it's like the cherry on top after your career is successful. Like, okay, now you can have it
Yeah,
if you want it. It's extra. Instead of being like the foundation for, to me, it's like, I see it as the foundation for a healthy society. Like when you have a healthy person
totally.
with another healthy person, they create a healthy partnership and they create a healthy family and a healthy home, which creates a healthy community, and it expands outward.
Yeah, I love that. So it's like what I'm hearing you say is we as a society, we've almost removed the most important thing, which is the home, or sort of like the hearth, right? The center from which, I mean, like if you go back to ancient times, all of the houses were built around the hearth, right? And so if you like you think that being the center part of the house, like the kitchen or like where food was made, like the hearth of the home, and having that be the place from which the whole society flourishes or doesn't flourish, right? And collapses. And I think it's really interesting what we're seeing right now, just collectively around there's so much collapsing, so many structures, so many systems, so many you could say like family values or the family unit or the nuclear family, all of these structures that have been upheld for millennia are very much under attack right now, or very much, you could say, collapsing. And I believe what you're speaking to is so powerful, because I feel like what happens, it's like we almost like took the heart out of what creates a healthy society, what creates a thriving culture, right? And we just sort of took that out and almost took it as like an afterthought versus where it all stems from, right? And this really is to me like such, and this is why your work is so beautiful. It's because it's like returning our sense of value into where it was all along, which is home. Like the feminine archetypally represents home. Like that's not our journey is not about going out and slaying the dragon and going out and like fighting the demons or whatever. Like, it's about being home. It's about, and whether that is a physical home or just like an energetic home that we're holding, but like we're representing that. And when we leave that space, it's almost like everything gets out of whack.
Yeah, you've said it so beautifully. I mean, from a biological standpoint, the womb is our first home, and it is our connection to home. And then the hearth, it's like it is central to like nourishment, and not just physical nourishment, although that could be entirely its own topic if you want to talk about like the health of society and how we're all eating
Oh
processed.
yeah, for sure.
No one's taking any, thought to like, how can I nourish myself and my family? But that's
Mhm.
one aspect of it. But it's also like the energetic nourishment of having something to come home to, like having your home be a space where you can't wait to get there at the end of the day. It's the best part of your day. And for everyone in the family. And the woman, like a woman prioritizing that is one of the most beautiful things in the world. And it's just interesting to me. I see so many people, their first goal in being successful is to hire help for that, for like just the menial, it's seen as like menial labor. Anyone can,
Mm.
it's very actually, even just, a housekeeper or a nanny, they're one of the lowest paid workers in society too. So we see the way we value it in that, also in that it's like the easiest thing to hire someone else to do because it doesn't matter that much. And I don't think
Right.
that there's anything wrong with having help. I don't know what I would do without my housekeeper. Like I
Mhm.
have two businesses. It's not about that we all have to like go home and do everything ourselves. It's more about our values and like what
Mhm.
as important.
Yeah, I love that so much. And it sounds like it's almost like, to me, it's like sort of putting the earth back on its axis in a very like, in almost like a literal sense of, you said like being able to cook meals that are nourishing to us and to our families, and creating actual physical health. But then there's also like an energetic nourishment that comes out of this home space, this hearth space that really kind of sets things right. And I feel like because perhaps it is always so unseen, it's almost the element of a culture or a society that's behind closed doors, and perhaps it's not out there and like showy and like on stage and like rah rah rah, but it's a very necessary, very foundational piece to any healthy society, but it's almost like unseen. And I wonder if you think that's maybe why it feels like, oh, it doesn't matter as much, or it's not valued as much, because it's sort of, it's behind closed doors. Like nobody comes into your home, and you don't get like the social media like brownie points for like having or maybe you do, but like for having a beautiful home or like nourishing your family. It's like, it's more like it's you could say it's humble work. It's not like this sort of flashy, showy thing.
Yeah, 100%. And Alison Armstrong talks about this in one of her trainings. I can't remember which one, but it might have been Celebrating Partnership. But she talks about how the role, there's a supporter and there's a provider in the best relationships. And the role of the provider is very like honored in our society, and the role of the supporter is diminished. And she said, women aren't going to want to take on the role of the supporter until our society is able to value both equally. And there's no real reason why the supporter shouldn't be just as valued. There's no real reason why homemaking should be humble work, except that our society valued it to the point where it is seen as just kind of like drudgery. And the
Yeah,
supporter,
drudgery, right.
it's like everybody wants to be the provider, and because that's what our society values.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet, like, if we're always in that provider role, we're always in that, like, I'm going out and like hunting or whatever. Like, I'm curious if you have been that in your life, if you have experienced that, and what effects that you had to your own relationship with your own femininity, with your own sense of being at home within yourself. Um, I'm curious if there's like a journey as to like that brought you from where you were to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd spent a lot of years in survival mode, working 3 jobs at a time. And if you'd asked me, even probably any time before I found this work, I would have said that my best quality was my work ethic. I was so proud of the fact that I could outwork anyone. And I still have an excellent work ethic. Like I said, like I'm running 2 businesses right now, but I don't really see that as what's most valuable about me. And I know that the masculine doesn't see a woman's production in the, in the material world as what's most valuable about her. So I think the journey, it's not even necessarily, I mean, ultimately, my like big dream is that I do have a one-to-many business that really supports me so that I'm baking sourdough in my kitchen. Like that's my dream. But there's
Beautiful.
stuff to get there. And I love how you talk about the yin and the yang aspect of the feminine, where we don't have to leave femininity, it's such a hard word to say sometimes, femininity to get things done. We can,
Yeah.
I mean, a woman waking up like every 4 hours to feed her new baby isn't just laying
Yeah.
back, you know.
She's definitely getting something done. Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the most feminine things in the world. So
Yeah.
I feel like the more I'm able to step into this, being rooted in my femininity and realizing that like sometimes it is leaning back and receiving, and sometimes it's making a meal, and sometimes it's working with my clients, and sometimes it's making a social media post, and sometimes it's doing the dishes. It doesn't have to look a certain way, and I
Right.
don't have to abandon it in order to accomplish something.
Yeah. And I love that. So it's like, I think for me, when I had that sort of like, oh, now I'm in my feminine, now I'm in my masculine, that felt almost like I was leaving myself, or I was somehow like becoming something that I wasn't, or that was like foreign to me, in order to be able to do something that, that I needed to do, that I needed to get done. But like what I love what you're saying, and I very much resonate with this, is like, it's always feminine, whether you're working with your clients, whether you're working, baking sourdough in the kitchen, whether you're nursing a child, whether you're um, cleaning the house, whether you're doing whatever, like you're always in that feminine embodiment, and you don't have to like leave home in order to like do what you need to do in this world. And I feel like those feminine qualities also There've been quite a few studies done around this, around how like having a woman's insight and intuition, even on something like, you know, stock trading or something like that, has really, really, really helps like with the actual results of like people get in the stock market. So even just having that like understanding that like the feminine has been, I mean, in my experience and observation and studies, it's like the feminine has been chronically devalued throughout history, both by postmodern feminism, but also you could say um, perhaps certain aspects of like shadow patriarchy, right? Where it's sort of like the feminine really is meant to be more this like subjugated thing. It's like she doesn't matter. She's just like an afterthought, even going back to Genesis of like that I just had another podcast interview about this today where we talk about that like original split that didn't just happen between like man and God, but happened between man and woman, and like how we've had to suffer over the years of this fallen relationship between each other. And it's sort of like, how do we make our way back? How do we bring back the value of femininity, the true value of femininity, which is equal to the masculine, but it is not the same, right? It is complementary in nature. I feel like I just went a little bit all over the place there, but really what I'm hearing you say is that like we always get to be in our feminine, and our feminine is always valuable. The feminine matters, and the feminine is valuable across many, many different facets of society. It doesn't have to just be one expression fit
Absolutely.
into one little box.
I love that so much. And I didn't know that about the stock market, but that doesn't surprise me at all because
Yeah.
women's intuition is usually dead on. I feel like that one of the problems that I actually have with kind of radical feminism is that it doesn't value the feminine. It helps women to be more masculine. So it's still valuing, it's just carrying on of, like you said, like the shadow patriarchy of like men are the most valuable, or the masculine is the most valuable, but like women, you can be masculine too. Like,
Yeah,
no,
right. Like you could be valuable like a man, but you're not valuable. Yeah, exactly.
exactly. Like it's
Yeah.
still sending the same message of like the feminine's not all that important. And no. And I think what I'm so inspired by is that we are seeing like this huge return to the feminine, and people have their own. I mean, there was a while where I was really into like the goddess and like the whole like feminine energy. And now I resonate. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that at all. To me, that was like a bridge to where I'm at now. And it was very valuable,
Totally.
but it's more of like actual femininity in my life. And like, what does this look like on a practical level? And the feminine being wildly valuable and integral
Mm.
to like the healing of society. Like we were just
Oof.
for the mother. And I went
Yes.
from really, and I don't see anything wrong with like goddess, anything. Like I've consumed a lot of content on that, but like
Sure.
I'm so inspired by like the Mother Mary, like an actual physical woman that was just
Yeah.
this beautiful embodiment of the feminine, and like on earth, like I don't know,
Yes.
to me that's so inspiring. And I feel like there is a returning to what we've always known, which is that exactly what you said, men and women are equally valuable but different.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you said about the Mother Mary piece too, because again, it's almost like one of those stories that it's funny too, because in certain branches of Christianity, like Mother Mary is very much a part of the story. If you look at Roman Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy, like she's right there. She's there the whole way. And then if you go into like Western evangelicalism or more like the American church, it's like we need to get get her out.
I'm
It's
afraid of
very
her.
fascinating. Yeah, they're super afraid of of her and the value and the necessity and even the significance of the story that like you know the like Christ came through, and again I'm speaking from a Christian lens, but also from sort of an archetypal mythological lens. So, but Christ, if you think about Christ as being like the Son of God or the man, God on earth coming to earth, like he came through a female's womb. he didn't just like appear out of the sky. Like he came through a woman's body, which is incredible.
And she was very influential in his life. Like
Yes, that's
right
true.
there through all the gospels, there's references to her and she was a part of it. So
She
yeah,
was there the whole way. Yeah.
I'm very inspired. Like I'm on my own journey towards rediscovering like what I actually believe about God and Jesus and all of that, because I was raised very fundamentalist. And
Yeah.
that doesn't value Mary at all. The kind that's like,
Yeah.
I've actually read some Catholic books just because I was curious about Mary, and I'm inspired by the way that they honor her, and they still,
Yeah.
um, she's a part of it. She's a really big part of it, and I like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's fascinating too, because like throughout the scriptures, like there's like, it's like the women are there the whole way. The women are the first ones to like, Mary Magdalene's with him, like when he's like through the whole death
Yeah.
and resurrection, and like she's there with him. Um, and there's all kinds of stories about that, but like just even the significance of that, like, wow, like that was a woman who was there with him the whole way through. And like even the first woman that person that Jesus revealed himself to was the woman at the well. And so it's like there are these threads of like how like women are often the first to see these things, or women are the ones to know these things, perhaps not just a mental knowing or an intellectual knowing, but like a somatic, deep, intuitive, instinctual know it, like a gnosis that we have. Again, this is one of the gifts of the feminine.
Yes, it's so true. It's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful and it's so valuable, and I just feel like what you're saying is it's so meaningful, because I almost feel like it's never quite been, you could say, yes, these templates existed in the 1950s, but not in the way that you're speaking to them,
Yeah,
of like really bringing that like the value.
I think I mean, I don't know if it's new because there's nothing new under the sun, but I think you're right. We didn't value women in the 1950s the same way we're learning to value them now.
Mm,
My grandparents had a better relationship basically because of very clearly defined roles and an unwillingness to give up for any reason. Like you just
yeah,
didn't
right.
back then. You figured it out. And I
Yeah,
actually am very inspired by that. I think you talk about this a lot of like a lot of
yeah,
divorce need to happen and you don't there's ways to heal it, especially through like learning about masculine and feminine polarity.
yeah,
Where they don't necessarily need to happen, and sometimes there are very good reasons, but um I like what Laura Doyle says, like if there's no addiction, abuse, I think it's like addiction
yeah,
or like it can be healed.
yeah.
Almost
It's like addiction, abuse, or infidelity. It's like,
fidelity.
yeah,
That was the other. Mhm.
yeah, yeah,
So I think that's why we saw a lot more marriages lasting back then, is because they were willing to stick it out. Although I think we have an opportunity now, instead of just sticking it out, he,
yes.
and that's where the difference is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like too, there may be, and I just love this conversation so much because it really ties into so much of what I am so passionate about these days, which is marriage, right? And like being able to create a rebirth or renaissance in in your marriage, and being able to go back to like how it was at the beginning, or even better, and like being able to do this from the woman's side of the street, because we are so powerful as women. We have such a incredible gift of being able to like speak life into our husbands, and being able to heal any places where we felt devalued, coming back into relationship with our own feminine gifts, our own um our own desire, our own vulnerability, like all of these gorgeous gifts that we have innately as women. That's just who we are. And so it's like we almost have the ability, what I'm seeing is like we can take it beyond where it was in the 1950s, or how it's been for millennia. This is at least like my vision that I feel like I keep receiving, I keep getting, is like we can, it's like taking the best of the old and new worlds.
Absolutely.
It's taking the best of like the traditional, and also maybe the more progressive or modern, and like creating something that's not just about survival or just kind of sticking it out because that's what you do, but like truly thriving in union with the opposite sex.
Yes, and women are the relational geniuses. Like we have
Yes.
for relationships, we can feel the energy around someone. We can feel when something is off. We are very
Yes.
intuitive. We are gifted when it comes to relationships. And it's interesting that as feminine women are more in their masculine, that is one of the things that's suffering the most. And I heard
Mm.
this, I read this one book where she was talking about how the fall, Adam wasn't deceived, Eve was deceived, but she was so powerful and so influential that she, even though he wasn't deceived,
Mm.
gave him the fruit. And he's like, whatever you say, babe. Like
You're right.
she's
Yeah,
that
right.
powerful. And that's why in this
Yeah.
story, the serpent came for her because of her power, not because
Mm.
she was stupid or like she was
Like weak or whatever. Right.
unique, yeah, or like more easy to manipulate, but more of like, if you want to target the man, you go through the woman.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's probably true. Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting way of looking at it, but I think there's probably some truth to that.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I see like I kind of see radical feminism in a similar way as like if you want it, and I don't want to like get too like conspiracy theory or anything, but like if you
That's
wanted
okay.
to if you wanted
We can go there like wherever you want. Yeah.
to, you would be smart to go through the women because women
Hmm.
have so much power.
I think that's true. And I also feel that I feel like women have, and you can let me know if this is your experience, but like we as women, we often see things in a very non-dual sort of way where it's like there's often no, like for me as a woman, it's like easy for me to be like sometimes lack discernment, which is why I so appreciate having my husband because he can often like point things out that are coming in or that he can see things like he has a clarity of vision. He's like, yeah, this person is not meant to be in our field right now. But because I wouldn't say it's necessarily a naivety, maybe it's a little bit of that, but it's like I want to like love everyone. I want to like maybe there's an innocence there. There's a sense of like everyone is good and everyone is, and that's not necessarily like maybe that is true from some non-dualistic perspective, but I feel like in reality that's not what's going on. There's a lot of weird, especially right now, a lot of like weird psychic forces that are at play, and if we're not like discerning, if we don't have that I would say like masculine discernment that often comes from an external masculine human in our life, it's like there's just weird things that can come in.
I I have had this experience as well of just being like so open and so trusting and so innocent and
Yeah.
have Corey be like, no, that person doesn't have good intentions, or no,
Yeah.
and he can see it and I can't. But I'm grateful to be able to stay in that innocence and
Yes.
him to show up and protect me and to like just it makes me feel very held in my feminine to be able to not have to be going around like trying to discern and judge.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, yeah, that's a really, really good thing. And so like having that again, one of the amazing roles of the masculine is that protector and that like that capacity to kind of draw a line and maybe even draw a sword, whether not necessarily a literal sword, but like being able to say no. These are the walls of the castle and like you cannot pass.
I have this theory that I've never shared publicly before, but it's kind of on the topic, so I'll just
I'd
go.
love to hear it. Yeah.
I I feel like sometimes I see like the liberals and the conservatives as like the masculine and like the conservative is the
Oh
masculine,
yeah.
liberal is the feminine. And if you took like the higher qualities that each of those sides want, and of course, like both parties have been, there's good, whatever, there's good and evil. But if you took like
Yeah.
the good things from both and you
Yes.
unified them as masculine and feminine,
Yeah.
it would solve almost every problem.
It would literally solve like all I really believe that. Yeah. It would create union. It would create unity, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so much of the fragmentation that we're seeing, I think, is literally just a manifestation of this schism that exists right now between the masculine and the feminine, whether you could say that's like the left brain and the right brain, the heart and the heart and the mind, the man and the woman. But again, it's like these polar opposite of forces that when they are in union are truly like that is the most powerful thing on earth, like in the cosmos. But when you stick something in that to create that division, to create that separation, that's when I really feel like the world is kind of thrown off its axis.
Yeah, 100%. You see everything so beautifully.
Thank you. I feel the same about you, Sarah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's like such a beautiful way that you speak to things, such a clarity to your words that's really very beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask you too, because I still have some, maybe it's my feminist condition, maybe it's my inner rebel, maybe it's my own sort of like, I don't know, but I still have an issue. Like physiologically, I still have this kind of like sense of like, I couldn't ever just be a homemaker, or I couldn't ever just be like, there's a part of me that feels like that's enough, not enough. And it's really interesting because I see that play up, you know, in my like in my home. I'm like, I have so much resistance to doing like housework, even though I love cooking. I've never been good at housework, but I'm curious what you would say to a woman like me, or like another woman who has that resistance or that deep sense of like, oh, this is like drudgery. Kind of like embrace homemaking as a beautiful art, or like bring that artistry, or bring that sense of dignity, or that real like this is a valuable thing, versus me just doing some like, you know, lowly like chores that like you know, like I have to do in order to like because I have to, you know, because I'm a woman and I'm supposed to. So that's the relationship I feel myself having with like um yeah, cleaning specifically. It's like really hard for me to like bring myself to that.
Well, first of all, there's no right or wrong, and there's no rule that like a woman has to do everything. Like
Mm,
that insane amount of work. Um, it can be. It really depends on how you want to look at it. But for there's nothing wrong with having help. I think it's extremely, I think we used to have community and we used to have families all living together, and there wasn't one woman trying to run an entire house. And if there was, a lot of times there were people that worked for her. And we
mm,
still have access to that today. Like it's actually very affordable to have somebody come in and clean your house once a week. Um,
yeah.
so it's not about doing it all. And there's different seasons. So you might
Mm,
like having a passion and like a creative outlet is a beautiful feminine expression. And a lot of times that is a business. I love my business. But the way that I kind of see housework now is if I can be the one, if I have the time to like lovingly infuse my energy into my home as I fold my clothing or do my,
yeah.
and I can just get into like a flow state with it. And, you know, it takes me maybe 20 minutes to pick up the house, but as I'm picking up the house, I'm touching everything. And
Mm,
it's like every room that I go through, I can see it as like I'm warming it up with my energy, and it feels good to
wow.
me to be the one. And I have help. Like I
Mm,
don't scrub my bathtubs or my toilet because I'm blessed beyond belief to have like a wonderful
mm,
housekeeper and to be able to afford that. And it might be different if I were at a different stage in my business. Like I don't have kids. So right
yeah.
now, I like my business is a huge creative outlet for me. And it's
Yeah.
something I absolutely love. But I know a lot of women where they never thought they would want to be home, and then they have their first baby and they can't bear to part with it for 5 minutes.
Mm,
It's,
mm-hmm,
I think it's just, I don't know. I haven't had a baby, but
mm-hmm.
I think there's just kind of this insane bond that happens for a lot of women where they couldn't imagine dropping their baby off at daycare and going to work. Um,
Right.
I don't think there's right or wrong. And I don't even stand for a woman having to do housework. It's more
Mm,
what I stand for is like revaluing housework and
yeah. Right.
that the energetic frequency that a woman brings to everything that she does.
Yeah. I mean, it almost like I love the way you describe that of like you going through these different areas of your home and like blessing your home or like infusing it with your energy. It's almost like you're bringing your own love and your own like magic and your, you know, all of these beautiful qualities that you hold as a woman. And it's like you're almost like you're creating like a space that's just filled with love and goodness and health and beauty and abundance. And it's sort of like being able to, I mean, I would say like the feminine, like we set the tone of the relationship. And so it's almost like you're sounds like that's just you're weaving that into the practice of homemaking or housework versus having it be this, oh, this drudgery, this thing that we have to do. And maybe there are certain things that do feel like that you can receive help around.
Absolutely. Yeah. I used to, many, many years ago, I used to date a chef, and he would talk about how you have to get to the restaurant early because you have to warm it up before the people get
Yeah.
there. And he wasn't talking about turning on the heater. He was talking about going in and
Mm.
warming it up by like the presence of, the wait staff and the chef and everybody getting there first. And I always think about that in relation to my home of like, I'm warming it up, you know?
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, that makes so much sense. Yeah. It's so funny too, because we literally just moved into this new home in New Orleans. It's so fantastic. We're probably going to, we could be here for a year, but we've been kind of digital nomads for a while. And so for us to like land in our first home and to be like, yes, this space feels so good to me. It feels like home, at least for now. It feels like root chakra landing. Although we ultimately want to be in Italy, it's like to have this space and to have this home and to have this sort of space where we can land, even though we don't have, it's not fully furnished yet or anything like that. For me, it's been a very interesting process, especially as we've been traveling so much to be like in one space and to have that like landing and that energy of home starting to come back in. So it's really, yeah, I find it very relevant to this conversation that we're having, at least in terms of where I'm at in my life.
Yeah, there is a beautiful feeling of having a home, having a space where you are infusing it with your energy. That's where you come home every night. And there's
Yeah,
super seasons in your life too, where you're traveling and you're all over the place. But then I think you bring your energy to those spaces as well. And so
sure.
it's not necessarily that you have to, something that I really believe is it's not about necessarily being like a suburban mom of two with
Mhm.
home. It's like any woman anywhere at any point in her life, if she's in her like femininity, is going to create home.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
You're there for a week or you're there for a year or you're there for, you know, my grandparents lived in the same house their entire life. Like they're from the time I was 3 and then till they died. So it's
wow.
different for everybody.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, yeah, I feel like home has been it's been an interesting journey for me too, because I've always been kind of somewhat nomadic. I've lived in like so many different places and different countries. And I have to say, like, my relationship with home as a child was like not such a great one. Like, just home never felt like a safe place. And what I've noticed over the past couple of years, especially, is like the more that I've learned how to feel safe within my own body and like within my own vessel, like I really do feel this sense of like home wherever I go. Like I am home, like in my body. That's like the original home. And then from that space, like I can create home around me. Um, so it's really interesting too, like when like, I mean, I feel like it's a very much like a root chakra conversation around home, because it's like when we can feel safe, when we can feel grounded, when we can feel stable, when we can feel held in like the container of home, then everything seems to be able to come back into alignment in our lives.
Yeah. And it's like that feeling of home within yourself is emanating outward and it's creating home everywhere.
Yeah,
Like, have you ever been
totally.
in like a home that no one's lived in a really long time, like an abandoned home,
Mm.
a
Oh
museum where
yeah.
it used to be a home? And not even just like the care, obviously, like there's dust and there's, it's not cared for, but there's like
Yeah.
an energetic feeling when you go into a home that's lived in versus when you go into a home that no one's lived in for 100 years and it's now just a museum or something. But like it feels
Yeah,
different energetically to me, like
totally.
wildly.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really, really interesting point. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's like a felt sense of like this is like this home is alive,
Yeah.
versus a home that's like dead
Mhm. And it's because of the people, probably because
because
of
of the people, because of the woman. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's I just love everything you're saying, and it's so relevant to everything that that I share in my work. And I feel like the home piece is really just coming online in a whole new way for me right now. So thank you for that. I wanted to ask you about like being feminine in business and like what that looks like for you specifically. And I feel like that's one of your areas of genius. It's like you're able to like be a business owner, like a very productive and very fruitful and successful business owner while not like losing yourself or burning yourself out or like trying to co-opt the masculine.
Well, I just finished a launch and it's my second launch of my signature program. And the first time I did it, I was just experimenting. I was doing beta testers. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have any sort of plan. And so this
Yeah.
time, I was like, I'm going to do it right. And I'm going to have a marketing plan and I'm going to go live this many times and I'm going to send this many emails and and I have this coach, Danielle Venables, who's just incredible. And she works with the Akashic Records. And she had this kind
Oh,
of
cool.
visualization when we were in the Akashic Records. And she was like, you have two choices here. She's like, you have this like really floaty energy around your business. And what I see is this wall and you have a choice. You can become the wall and dig under it, or you can just double down on floating and float over it. And what she meant by that
Uh-huh.
was you can do all the things that you think that you're supposed to do to have the
Yeah.
success, or you can just keep doing whatever you're guided to do and whatever you're already doing, and you can launch it that way. And I had to me, a very successful launch, and I didn't do anything that I didn't want to do. And I didn't do anything different. And I didn't do anything that like blew out my nervous system, or I
Mhm.
honestly didn't do any more work than what I normally do, except maybe like I went live a couple times. And it was so easy. But I'm tempted all the time to like adopt a strategy or use a framework or do
Yeah.
something the way that other people do it, where they say this is what works, but it's like, for who? Like,
Yeah, right.
have to be this way just because that's the way that we've been doing business for the past
Right.
100 years, whatever. Like, we can create a new way, a way that's supportive to us, a way that honors our intuition, and really just when my business works the best, it's when I'm just taking the next step that God gave me and
Yes.
full surrender to God. And I'm just doing the next thing. Like, it's like to me, it feels just like an intuitive knowing of like, this is the next thing.
This is the next thing.
I don't
Yeah.
have to know the thing after that. I just have to know what that thing is. And sometimes the
Right.
thing is to take a hot bath and read a novel and go to bed early, you know?
Yeah, right, right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I love that. And like being in that space of surrender and being in that space of like trust and just following the next steps. I mean, that works best for me by and large. Also, I'd like to have a little bit of like, let's say like masculine structure or masculine support, because then I feel like there's more space for me to flow within that structure. But I'm not the one creating that structure. Like my like my husband's like doing all of that stuff. So it really works well for me because I'm able to just like be in my flow, be in my fun, be in that space of just I'm going to follow the next guided step. um I think where I've gotten tripped up in the past is like, oh, now I need to leave my feminine and I need to go be masculine. Now I need to leave this part of me that flows and that follows the guidance, and I need to somehow like go and control or hustle or push. I'm curious if you feel that sometimes still, or is that like, have you ever felt that? Is that something that you still feel sometimes, or
Absolutely.
just
It's a constant journey and learning. And in my other business, seeing one-on-one clients, I'm very, very, very booked. Like
Mm,
a lot of times I'll do like 100 one-on-one appointments a month. And
wow.
it's a lot for me, but that is one of the gifts of building this online business, is that I'm doing it completely differently. And
Yeah.
what I used to see as a limitation of like, I don't have enough time, it's a gift because I'm creating this business with a very minimal amount of time.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's working. But if I had the time, I think I'd be tempted to do all the things. Like, you know how they say your task will expand to fit the amount of time that you have? I think that's true.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Yeah.
Building it in this really easeful way because I have no choice. So when I am able, and I'm working on this right now, when I
Creative.
when I am able to hire, the main priority right now in my massage therapy business is to hire help and to just probably reduce my workload in half.
Mm.
And then I'm gonna be able to just like ease into this really beautifully easy on the nervous system feminine business that I'm creating. Um, because in a way I have no choice but to create it that way.
Right. Yeah. So it sounds like the necessity is like the mother of invention is kind of like what's
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah, I love that so much. And, you know, resourcefulness, again, it's one of those qualities of the feminine that I feel like we find ways to make it work with the limited amount of time that we have. And yeah, I mean, I think that's so beautiful the way you describe that.
And you are like a prolific content creator. And I feel your content coming from just full inspiration. And there's people that they would say like post, 3 times a day on do like they would instruct someone to do exactly what you're already doing. But I feel it from you. It's like
Mm,
flowing through you. And like that's the goal, right? Like that's the way you want it to be, where you're so tapped into your channel and you're so in your feminine creativity that you don't even have to try. It just flows.
yeah. Do you want to know what my creative process is? I like literally never shared this with anyone
Let's
else. I will just like go walk around town and like get into a vibe and just like maybe I'll say some affirmations or I'll read them back on my phone and listen to them about like how I want the launch to be or like how many clients or like whatever. And then I'll just like wait. Like I for some reason when I'm walking, I'm just able to like tap into like my creative muse and it just like, oh, and then like usually after about 20 minutes of walking, it's just like it comes through and I'm like, okay, and I'm just gonna like write this post in the middle. I'm gonna like either go to a cafe or I'm gonna like sit down on a stoop and just like let it come through. That's literally how it comes through. Like I rarely like sit down at a desk and like do work. Which is kind of strange, but yeah.
I can't do that. I have to move. A lot of times when I'm
Yeah.
massaging someone, that's actually when the best stuff comes, when because I get into a flow state.
I'm
But
not surprised. Yeah.
like that's genius because it's not like you're doing a strenuous workout. You're just like, here I am moving my body. And I think when we move our body, we do start to move energy and we do start to open our channel. That's really inspiring.
Yes. And we're like embodying, like, so for me, when I'm walking, it's like really easy for me to embody the feelings of like what I want.
Yeah.
I can like feel myself with the clients. I can talk about manifestation. I can feel myself like with the successful launch. I can like feel it in my actual vessel versus in my head or like, you know, I'm just thinking about it and like it's somewhere out there in the field. It's like in my body and like I'm embodying that version of myself that like where it's already done. And I think from that space, it like drops in. I don't know if you have that, if you feel that too, but um,
I think there's definitely something to it. Yeah. It's coming from, well, I notice I don't do this anymore, but I used to sometimes try to think of content
mm,
and I could come up with stuff, but it was never
yeah,
that, I didn't love it. No one else really loved it that much. But when I hear it, like it's coming from, it's hard to explain if where it's coming from, but it's not coming from my head.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. For me, it's like somehow like dropping down from like above.
Yeah,
Like
I'm sure, but it's not my head.
yeah, Yeah, exactly. It's like coming from somewhere in the field and like dropping into the body. That's how like into the heart or into the, yeah,
Yeah.
into the, it's no, it's really fascinating. Like I love hearing about people's creative processes because everybody has like unique ways of getting into that creative flow state. And it sounds like you definitely do as well, Sarah. Yeah. Um, is there anything else you just would love to share with in this conversation? I feel like this has been so enriching for me so far, but is there anything that else that's just on your heart that you would love to drop into this space?
Just that I see a lot of women who they see the problem. They see the lens of like there's no more good masculine men and women are masculinized and that it's a whole mess out there. And
Oh
I
yeah.
really see it different. I mean, I know that I'm aware, but I really see like so much hope and so much
Mhm.
and so much change and so much healing. And it does, like you say, like it does start with women. Like it starts with us because it's
Yeah.
always us. And we have
Yes.
so much power to shift things.
I love that so much. And yeah, I mean, that is the like the gospel, like my message right now. It's just like women, we have the power and it's not this other form of power. And I think a lot of us have a maybe very corrupted relationship with power where maybe we used it to manipulate or we used it to try and control something or control a man or control, and so I think a lot of us have a very, even that word, like feminine power sometimes can feel scary or it can feel like, oh, I don't want to be that, right? And yet with great power comes great responsibility. And we have an incredible amount of power to thrive in our unions, to call in our beloved, to call in an aligned partnership, to call like really create thriving marital unions that last a lifetime. And it like we hold the keys, like we really, really do. I'm so with you on that.
I love this conversation so much. Thank you
Me
so
too.
much, Claudia. I love talking to you.
I know it's so rich, Sarah. Thank you so much for taking this time. I'm wondering how might people be able to find you? Like, what is the best way to get in touch with you, to follow your work, to become a part of your community?
Facebook is my favorite place. I just love the community aspect of it, how like you're friends with people and you can see their stuff and they see yours. And it's just Sarah, Sara Whipp, WHIPP. And then I'm also on Instagram at embodied_blonde.
I love that. I love that name, by the way, Embodied Blonde. It's so good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. Like, I just really, really appreciate you and this conversation and the medicine that you bring to this world. It's so, so needed right now. And I feel like you're just going to go on to like do so many incredible things for women and for relationships and yeah, for women in all areas of their lives, really, because you're so multi-dimensional. So thank you.
Thank you. This is so fun. I really
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you so much.
it. Bye.